Welcome on in to the midweek edition of Wager Talk Extra. I'm your host, Dan Alexander, alongside all of my great guests, reminding you no matter what sport you're cashing on, the money spends the same, and it is oh so green. We got Andy Lang talking some UFC action, Kevin Dolan with a little bit of boxing. So let's welcome in the unofficial official co-host of Wager Talk Extra, Andy Lang, joining me. And Andy, I think it was another week for us cashing with our There Will Be Blood plays. So, I mean, this thing has just been a moneymaker, man. How you doing?
I'm doing good, and yeah, we continue to say that the "There Will Be Blood" segment tells you that a fight is going to go under, and sure enough, we had a very early knockout, and there wasn't a ton of blood, but there was blood on the knockout. Rob Font just laid it to his opponent, and a guy went down, and there's blood coming out of his nose, so that counts. I believe that moves us to 5-1 on There Will Be Blood. We have some fun with it, but again, this is a fight that we predict that there will be violence, there will be a lot of strikes, and therefore we should be looking at some unders. So 5-1 on these plays to go under is a pretty good run. We got a good one this week.
And it will be another week where we make the plea to the sports books. Offer the prop. Do the There Will Be Blood prop. We're ready for it, and we're raring for it. So 5-1, as we said. And he's been pretty good prognosticating who's going to be having some nosebleeds there on the mat. And you have another one here, Barboza and Quarantillo, that you're looking here for There Will Be Blood. And don't think I forgot, Andy.
I want your blood. I want your souls. And I want them both right now.
Give them the breakdown, my guy.
Well, it's Billy Q fight week, and anytime you've got Billy Q involved in a fight, you know what to expect. High pace and a ton of strikes. There's not a lot of good fights this week for There Will Be Blood, but anytime Billy Q is involved, expect a lot of action. This guy's last fight against Alexander Hernandez was an absolute bloodbath. Both guys were bloodied up. The previous fight he had before that in 2021 was against Shane Burgos. Those two landed. Billy Q and Shane Burgos combined to land over 250 strikes. And he's going to have Edson Barboza, who has lost 2 in a row. He lost to Bryce Mitchell by unanimous decision, but Bryce Mitchell is not a finishing type of fighter, not a lot of violence. But before that, he got KO'd by Giga Chikadze. He knocked out Shane Burgos. And in that fight, there was blood, but it was coming from the leg of Edson Barboza because of so many leg kicks. So you're going to see tons of striking. I don't expect a whole lot of grappling. Look for 2 guys to stand in the ring and go very, very high paced. I like Billy Q. I think his pace is going to be too much for Barboza. I expect there to be blood. I think there's going to be finish. And if I do have to pick who's going to finish it, I think it's going to be Billy Q. So let's get Billy Q and Edson Barboza to have a violent, bloody match, and let's get the finish in this one.
So maybe we'll be moving to 6-1. As always, we'd love you to hop below in the comments and let us know who you think might be seeing a little blood on the mat this weekend in UFC action. One of our favorite segments we do here weekly on Wager Talk Extra. And now, Andy, I also love getting your thoughts on a fight to watch. A lot of times when we're talking to Kyle, when we're talking to Moneyline Matt, there are these marquee matchups. You're looking at Jacoby and Murzakanov. I had to be at least close on that one. What's the fight to watch?
Well, this is an interesting comeback fight for Dustin Jacoby because Jacoby suffered his first loss in the UFC in his last one against Khalil Roundtree. Split decision and very controversial. So you could have gone either way. I didn't think it was a complete robbery, but it was very close. So you're going to see how well Dustin Jacoby can come back from a loss. And he's fighting a guy that's a little bit of a mystery, Azamat Murzakanov. And what makes him a mystery is, so he goes on Contender Series and he gets the KO against Scheffel. Scheffel now is in Bellator, I believe, or maybe PFL. But he comes to UFC and he puts on a terrible display against Tufan Nchukwi. And then he gets a 3rd round knockout in a fight he was losing and a fight that he was doing absolutely nothing in there. So when we came out of that fight against Tufan, I was like, this guy just doesn't seem to have the pace. He doesn't seem to have the killer, the killer instinct. And then he fights Devin Clark and puts on an incredible performance. He knocks out Devin Clark, and I'm high on Devin Clark. So we have Azamat, who put on a terrible performance against Stefan, and then he puts on an incredible performance against Devin Clark. So you've got two interesting storylines in the light heavyweight. You're going to see Jacoby trying to come back from a loss. We have to try and see what Azamat, who he really is. Will the real Azamat please stand up? And the last three fights for Azamat have ended in KO, and Jacoby is a willing dance partner. There's not going to be a whole lot of grappling unless you see it from Azamat's side. I think this is just going to be two big, talented strikers standing there going toe-to-toe. Both these guys are really, really tough. They can give out good shots, and they can take good shots. I don't know if this one's going to finish, but I know it's going to be striker's delight. Just two big, strong guys going to war, and we'll see if Jacoby loses this. That's two losses in a row in the UFC. He's definitely not used to that. So we want to see how Jacoby does after a loss. We want to see if Azamat can give us a clue as to what his career is going to look like in his next few fights. He's 34, so he's got limited time to put on performances. This is a fight I'm definitely excited to watch.
He's Andy Lang. Make sure you check him out, wt.buzz/AL. And on our Tuesday edition, when we were talking a little PGA, you can go back and check that out on WagerTalk TV right here. You were mentioning that you have darts plays loaded, lacrosse plays loaded. So, Andy, when people head on over to your page in true WagerTalk Extra form, what are they going to find, and why is it every sport that has ever been played?
Well, we just find value in all these sports. So we have daily packages and we just include all of our plays. So, for example, today is Wednesday when we're recording it. We have an MLB play, we'll have NBA play, and we will have NHL. We also have a lacrosse play that is in there as well. Our UFC play will go up on Thursday. We are waiting for some distance props to come out. That's what we have circled. Normally we get our UFC plays up really early, but we're gonna wait, and we're going to put it up on Thursday because we have some fights circled that we'd love to do some distance plays on. So grab that. It's also PFL week, so we'll have PFL plays as well. All of that at WagerTalk.com.
And Andy is the perfect candidate if you're new to Wager Talk here to try out our promo code TRYWT. That's TRYWT. As he mentioned, he puts those daily packages up, those 3-day all accesses. Well, you can take 50% off of those if it's your first purchase here at WagerTalk.com. And Andy has had days where he has picked up over 60-some units in one day with some of these daily passes. So get some bang for your buck. Take 50% off and join us here at Wager Talk. That's our offer to you for checking us out. We're going to step aside here real quick. We'll be back with more Locked and Loaded on Wager Talk Extra. Don't leave. Welcome on back to Wager Talk Extra. And you know, we always love ending the show with our favorite Irishman taking a trip to Korea to check in with Kevin Dolan. He's got a 2-pack of plays for you, one of them on the pitch and one of them inside the ring. So, Kevin, let's get it started right here with a Europa League play. This one going on Thursday, and you wanted to take a look at the Sevilla and Man U match. So how are we going to be breaking this one down, Kev?
Yeah, well, obviously the last few years, these two teams clashing would have, conjured up images of a final. In all fairness, Sevilla 6-time winners of this competition since 2006. Man United won this competition back in 2017 as well. This year's favourites also. So, there's plenty of history between these two sides. But in current form, there's a sizable gulf in terms of where they are right now. Sevilla have endured an incredibly tough season, both domestically and in Europe as well. They had just one win in the Champions League before exiting that competition. They currently sit just 5 points above relegation in Spanish La Liga as well. They were actually inside the bottom three at the start of the year also, which, pales in comparison to Man United season. Take out the first few games for United there in the Premier League, and, they've been a dominant force under Ten Hag this year. So, it'll be interesting to see if the old Europa League masters, Sevilla, can kind of up their game and tap back into that bit of magic here on Thursday night, traveling over to England.
Well, and looking at the odds there, Kev, the sizable favorite when you're looking at Man U minus 262 on the 3-way line there. So what do you think? It sounds like you're leaning that way. Do you think there's a better way to attack it so you're not having to lay that kind of juice?
Yeah, I mean, exactly. There's a good reason for this line because on paper, pretty much every available metric is heavily in United's favour here. But, we have seen a change in management over at Sevilla. Mendilibar is coming at the helm. Sevilla are unbeaten, and now he hasn't had much time in charge, but they're unbeaten since he took charge nonetheless. And no Marcus Rashford for United in this one either. He's their top scorer this season with that muscle injury. So there are some things in Sevilla's favour ahead of this one. But, you know, for me, even with Rashford out here, United are simply too strong across the pitch, in my opinion. They're unbeaten in 24 straight games at home across all competitions. They won 21 of those 24 outright as well. And they faced a Sevilla side in this one that, you know, prior to that 2-0 victory over Cadiz 10 days ago, had been on a 7-game winless run on the road. They lost 5 of those 7 outright as well. So, you know, there is a reason why United are so heavily favoured here. Minus 263 on the money line right now. That's up from an opener of minus 244 as well. And like I said, it's hard to argue with those odds given how poor Sevilla have been away from home this year. So I'm going to trim those odds in here. I'm going to take Manchester United in the half-time, full-time prop at even money in this one. Far better price. You know, United are still fighting for that top 4 spot in the league. They have tricky games domestically coming up against Tottenham, Villa, Chelsea, and so on. Their 2 most recent games as well, they scored both opening goals in the first half. So I expect them to want to get a quick start here, get that early lead, put this game to bed, you know, before travelling over to hopefully finish Sevilla in Spain next week, you know, in terms of them. So, yeah, Manchester United half-time, full-time prop for me, even money on this one.
I like it. Wire to wire, Man U bringing it down to even money. That's play number 1 here. And we're going to talk boxing in just a moment, Kev. But before that, you're obviously talking Europa League there on our stoppage time show here on WagerTalk TV. You're famously known as the King of Spain. So you're looking at all of these different leagues on the pitch. And if people want to ride with your MLS, that's been one of the more profitable ones for you, they can get it for $100 off, just $199 for the rest of the MLS season using code MLS100. Highly suggest checking that out over at Kevin Dolan's page, wt.buzz/KD. All right, Kevin, so from the pitch, let's go inside the ring. Talk a little heavyweights action in London this weekend. Who are we looking at, brother?
Yeah, puzzling bit of matchmaking here, in all honesty, Dan. You know, Joe Joyce, a fighter who, you know, he's put himself firmly into the world title picture across recent fights. He's the mandatory now for Usyk's WBO title right now. He's had guys like Anthony Joshua, Tyson Fury, you know, call out his name across recent fights as well, because in the UK at least, Joe Joyce is a huge name. You know, any of those fighters we just mentioned, you know, sign off to fight Joe Joyce, that's an automatic, you know, Wembley type sellout. So, you know, to be so close to that promised land, you know, so close to that shot at the heavyweight crown, and then to turn around and face a guy like Zhilei Zhang this week shows either remarkable cojones on the part of Joyce or some really poor matchmaking from Frank Warren. You know, perhaps a mixture of both here, because Zhang is not the type of fighter you bring in for a stay-busy opponent. Out of both guys' resumes, in fact, Filip Hrgovic is by far the best opponent either of these two guys have faced in the professional ranks. You know, Joyce did fight Usyk in the semi-pro World Series of Boxing, but, you know, this is the potential in my mind to be a huge, you know, banana skin for Joyce this weekend in a fight I'm expecting an all-out war in.
Man, so Juggernaut versus Big Bang. It sounds like one of these awful X-Men movies that's going to be coming out. So how are we going to be betting this one? It sounds like you think it's a kind of quick turnaround for Joe Joyce here. Is he going to be overmatched? Does that mean he's taking a nap on the mat? How do you see this one shaking out, Kev?
You know, it's funny, Dan, because just over 2 years ago, I believe the single biggest boxing bet we've ever won at WagerTalk was actually on Joe Joyce. I took him up plus 1,000. 3% play to get the stoppage between round 7 to 12 against Daniel Dubois. And I remember making a video for that. I remember the general consensus in the chat was it was crazy. Joyce was too slow. He's too easy to hit. You know, Dubois, who is a phenomenal power puncher, you know, would simply iron him out inside 5 rounds and blah, blah, blah. But I went against that. To me, Joe Joyce has one of the best jabs in the entire heavyweight division. It's a pile driver jab. It breaks you down from the outside. And I felt that's exactly what would happen in that fight, you know, against the younger, more kind of inexperienced Daniel Dubois. And, you know, that proved to be the case. Dubois took an A in the 10th round from a shattered orbital bone. But, you know, skip forward 2 years later, and suddenly the pendulum swung a full 180 degrees. Now everyone's in love with Joe Joyce that I can see, and all the value now appears in opposing him. I don't agree with these lines at all. Joe Joyce is just way too easy to hit in there. You know, statistically, Joe Joyce is actually the easiest fighter to land on in boxing with power shots. 41.1% of all opponents' power shots, according to CompuBox, land on Joe Joyce in fights, which is by far the highest connect percentage in the entire sport. And, Well, you might get away with that against the likes of Joe Hanks and Brian Jennings and Carlos Takam. You're not going to get away with it from a guy, like Big Bang. I know Joe Joyce is famed for his granite chin in fights, but I don't care if your name is JC Bulldozer. No chin is going to be able to stand up to 40% plus connect percentage of those Zhilei Zhang left hands. So, if Joe Joyce comes into this one more cautiously, kind of like he did against Daniel Dubois 2 years ago, boxes behind the jab, looks to break Zhang down from the outside, look to take him into the second half of the fight where, Joyce's engine alone would give him the sizable advantage down the stretch, then I would favour Joyce under those circumstances. But if we see anything like the Joyce we've become accustomed to seeing over the last few years, walk you down, trade shot for shot. He talks about himself in the third person now. So I really start to think he's believing those press clippings. If that's the case, if this turns into a war, I'm more than happy to come in here and take the plus 1,200 on offer for Zhilei Zhang to win this one by KO on Saturday.
Love it, Kevin. And we already mentioned that great code that we have, MLS 100. Take 100 off your MLS rest of the season. So when people head on over to take advantage of that, what else are they going to see locked and loaded, man?
Yeah, that soccer special is also up as well for all the European domestic leagues. That's $199. I believe it's available until Thursday. As you said, MLS has been absolutely fantastic this year. 53 and 29 runner last 82 MLS plays. Obviously, ranked number one in the year with numbers like that. So, yeah, great time to jump on board using that code MLS 100 and profit with us over the summer.
He's Kevin Dolan. I'm your host, Dan Alexander. And big thanks to all our guests and our producers behind the scenes. Before we turn you loose, we're just giving out promo codes like candy. Because if this is your first time joining us here, you never have purchased picks from WagerTalk before, we have you covered, as you can take 50% off your first daily or 3-day all access using code TRYWT. It's our offer to bring you on in to the WagerTalk family. Make sure you check that out over at WagerTalk.com. That's going to do it. Best of luck on your wagers, and we'll be locked and loaded with another one for you here Thursday on WagerTalk Extra.